Hi, everyone. I'm so glad that you're here with us today with Michael Johnston, Associate Vice President from Pensacola State College. This is the second part of a two-part series, so I know you're really going to enjoy it. So without any more introduction, Mike, I'm going to turn it over to you so we can get started on these Excel analytic tips.
Thank you so much, June. I appreciate that wonderful introduction. And it's so great to see so many people that are new to this. And I think it's even more impressive to see the people that showed up for our first part of our series that are now back for step number 2 of this data analytics utility workshop. So as June mentioned before, this is part 2 of a 2-part series. So we did have one last week, but the nice part is that if you weren't able to attend last week was recorded, and you're able to go online and you're able to look and view that recording. But the nice part is that it will help you if you've attended, but if you didn't attend, it's completely okay, because I'm going to cover those topics a little bit quicker than last time. So that way we can make sure that we all catch up together. So if you weren't able to attend, no worries, we'll be able to catch you up. And we just have some opportunities for us to recognize how to work through our analytics collaboratively. So this is going to be a data dive session. So I love doing data dive sessions with people because it allows us to dig into our data together. And that's how we're able to tell these stories. And often we've seen situations in our departments where we're given massive amounts of data, but then we don't have always the resources that we don't realize we don't have in order to analyze it. So the goal today is to talk about telling that story. So in our last session, we talked about some great calculated fields and ways for us to combine the abilities for us to manipulate data such that we can analyze it today. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to do a little bit of calculated fields, and we're going to do some analysis, and we'll talk about how to do it quickly and all in under an hour. So I got some great feedback, and I always like to reflect on feedback because it helps me do better. And I'm always looking to get better. I love doing this kind of stuff, and I don't get to do it as often, but when I hear situations that are common, I want to reflect on them and talk about them. So I did hear that people said I went fast last time, and I know I went fast. But the idea of a situation like we're doing today is to provide the opportunity and the insight to know something can be done. But the great part about what IPDAY is doing is they're recording this, and I have no problem recording what I do. I can't take credit for anything that I've done here because I've learned it from someone else. So this is an ability for you to see the possibilities that may have an impact in your area. And if you can't do them, it's okay. If you just watch and come back, you're more than welcome to do as well. And I have no problem if you reach out as well and ask, because I think we're all here. We're all educators in some sense, and we recognize that we're going to grow together. So again, today, I'm not going to go as fast, and I provided a different type of data set such that it can help you. So I have some situations, or I have just some things I want to talk about here that we want to make sure that we know this is recorded. This recording will post within 48 hours on the IPDAY website. This is group and engaging. So I love the idea if you want to throw on your camera. I love seeing people. I don't think we get to see people as much anymore. So if you want to throw on your camera, you're more than welcome to. If you don't want to, I understand as well. If you want to raise your hand and ask a question, I'll be monitoring the type. If you want to go ahead and talk verbally, you're more than welcome to do that as well. So keeping that in mind, again, open communication. I will ask our team members at IPDAY to post the link such that they can download the data. I see that our colleague Robin would like the data posted. I completely agree. So that way we can have that. I do see that there's no audio. I believe that's coming through. So if you could check your speakers, Randy, that'd be fantastic as well. Another topic we just want to make sure we talk about is that please put your name and email address in the chat so that way they have record of who's attending this session. So if we could do that, I'd appreciate that. Again, I'll be monitoring each way. I'm looking forward to the opportunities for us to collaborate today in this group. So hopefully we all have access to this data. So if we have access to this data, could we give me a thumbs up on our Zoom? Hopefully we can see the Zoom, or if you're face-to-face, a face-to-face thumbs up. If you have the ability to give a thumbs up using the emoticons on Zoom, that would be fantastic as well. I see some thumbs up coming in. Awesome. So if you don't have that, they're going to post the link to download that. I don't see that posted yet. So if we can make sure to get that on there, I'd appreciate that. Tammy or Joseph, if we could post that link, that would be great so we can get access to the data. I will hold until we get that link posted, and then, well, I'll talk about it a little bit, but I want to make sure we get that link posted. So the difference of how I've structured this data from last time is that here you'll still be able to see my mouse. So my mouse is a little bit bigger than it normally is, and that way you can focus in. I have not only posted the data, but I've also posted the solution. So I'm sure you remember working through situations together, and it always really was nice to have the solutions every single time. Excellent. Thank you, Tammy. Tammy has posted the link for the data. So if you've not been able to download the data, Tammy has posted that in our chat. Thank you, Tammy. So if you did not attend, if you didn't put your information in last week, we got it this week. It's completely okay, and you can just someone from IPDA, I'm sure, will reach out to do that as well. So thank you, Mercedes, for bringing that topic up as well. So in here, going back to our data, we have not only posted the data itself, we've also posted the solutions, and this is just a form of solutions. The nice part about this is that with these solutions, there's a lot of different ways to go about analyzing these types of data. And I have posted a solution that I think can be helpful, and we're going to look at the solution and work our way backwards. Sort of like what happened when we were working and growing up and we were in school, and sometimes we look at the back of the book and we see the solution that's present and we use that to work our way back. So now, since we have the link posted and everyone should have access to the data, let's go ahead and talk about our first opportunity to use one of our fantastic functions in Excel. It's called the VLOOKUP. VLOOKUP. So in our VLOOKUP, we have situations all the time in our data where we say, I have to be able to match. I have to be able to transform my data using a common relationship. And often we hear this in terms of the word crosswalk. And all a crosswalk means is you take something and you translate it to something else. So in our data set today, I have identified the steps that we're going to take in the analysis on each page. And the nice part that I've done here is that if I'm going to use any formulae involved today, I've gone ahead and I have added that here for you. So if you get a little bit confused, or maybe you're not able to type it at the same rate that I am, that's okay. I've put the formula in our sheet for us to be able to leverage. And the nice thing is you can keep this for later on. I've done that before where I've kept some formulae later on as well. So that's going to be here for us to leverage and use in this circumstance. So in this circumstance, we have our students and we have races. And often it's great for us to know races, but sometimes we have to aggregate the outcomes using ways such that we have to crosswalk them. So there is a powerful function in Excel, and it's called the deduplicate or unduplicate function. So in this situation, I have all of these races that are listed for these different students. I have students that are white, I have students that are Black or African American, I have students that are classified as other non-white. What I want to do is that I want to deduplicate this column such that I find out each unique value. So I don't want white to repeat more than once. I don't want Black or African American to repeat more than once. I wanted to duplicate or unduplicate, dedupe or unduplicate this column. And there is a great way that Excel can do this. And we referenced the unduplicate function last week. So the nice thing that we're going to do here is that I want my unduplicated values in column B to populate in column J. I want my unduplicated values from column B to populate in column J. So what we're going to do is that we can do a couple different strategies. I'm going to do them twice so that way you can see. In my column B, I'm going to use my Control-Shift-Down key. Remember, Control plus holding Shift plus holding down allows me to highlight a whole column of data. Go ahead and try it and see if it works. Control-Shift-Down. Holding them both should allow you to highlight the entire column of data. If that doesn't work for you, it's okay. I can also drag and drop down all of this data such that I have it here in my column. What I'm going to do then is that I'm going to take this data, starting at my first student ID race, and I'm going to pull it down, or I could Control-Shift-Down and highlight, and I'm going to copy, which is also known as a Control-C function, but I'm going to right-click. I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to come over here to column J in my second row. I'm going to right-click, and then I'm going to paste it. And I did have a question come in the email, and people asked me, what's the difference between this paste button and all these other paste buttons? These paste buttons are specific towards the type of paste. So in this circumstance, this is a general pasting function, so it doesn't have a unique form. The interesting part about the paste functions is that it allows you to go through and actually see what this looks like just by hovering over them. So in this circumstance, I'm going to use the general paste function, which is this one right here. So I copied all of my values in column B to all my values in column J. Now, what I can do is that I'm going to highlight by left-clicking on column J. So I highlighted by left-clicking on column J, and notice it highlights the entire column, including all the cells down here that don't have anything. But that's okay for the dedup, the unduplicate function. So now, since I've done that, I've highlighted my column J. Under my data function, there is a key called remove duplicate. So some of you may be using a different form of Excel, or you could be using the version that is part of the web. You'll have a little key that looks just like this. It has a little X. It's just smaller and grouped usually up here in the corner. So this remove duplicate is the way that allows the column to remove all the values that duplicate more than once. So I'm going to click on this using my left key, and it's going to say, hey, Mike, do you want to expand this and unduplicate all of the data, or do you just want to continue and unduplicate what's in column J? And that's what this means. So I'm going to click on continue with the current selection, just my values in column J. And when I remove duplicates, it says, okay, does your column have a header? It does have a header. If I put this and I remove that little button, it's not going to see that race was my header. I'm going to click it. It recognizes that the race is my header, the top row. When I click OK, it identified that there were 43 duplicated values, and there are 6 values that remain. So now I recognize here that I have white, black, African American, other non-white, unknown, Asian, and American Indian, Alaskan. So these are the categories that exist over here. So I'll get this question all the time, and they'll say, hey, Mike, I need to know how many minority students do we have? What is my demographic breakup? Do I have any minorities compared to non-minorities? So I don't want to go through this and hand type in each one of these. That's going to take me too long. So the VLOOKUP function is very powerful, and I'm going to show you how to do it. What I'm going to do here first is in this box of data. So this is called a box. And the fancy term that Excel offers for a box of data is an array. An array and a box of data is the exact same thing. What I'm going to do here is that I'm going to create a crosswalk. A crosswalk meaning I'm going to start with this value of white, and I need to crosswalk it to another value. I'm going to start with this value of black African American, and I'm going to crosswalk that to another value. So I'm going to come over here, and if you, again, want to show, you see the outcomes of what I did over here. They're in the second page. I'm going to go through and say that this value is a non-minority. So all students that are qualified as white are non-minority, and I'm just going to say that everyone else is a minority. Minority, 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 minority. Oops, so now I didn't have to retype and think about this crosswalk for each unique value. Remember, I only have 50 students here, but what happens if we have 5,000? This is where the VLOOKUP function is going to be extremely powerful to help us. The VLOOKUP function says, take this value here, where I'm hovering, and find it in this box of data, this array of data, then produce the value directly to the right. So what this says is that for the student ID number 1 that's white, find the white value here, and then produce the outcome that's adjacent to it. And I love this. So I'm going to come over here to this value in C2, and I want to make this direct relationship. If you don't feel comfortable writing the formula, I copied the formula here. So all you do is have to highlight it, copy it. You come over here, paste it, copy and paste, and notice it's going to come up with the exact formula that you need to get the outcome. So if you need to use that formula, you're more than welcome to do it, but I'm going to walk you through it just so it helps so you can do it in the future. So I'm going to do it 2 ways. I'm going to use this f of x function, which means provide me the function, provide me that equals function value. So mine comes up here at top because I've used it and I've practiced this a couple times, but if it doesn't, I'm just going to type VLOOKUP in my search. I'm going to type VLOOKUP in my search, and then it populates down here. And when you click OK, a lot of people get thrown off because of what it says, and they say, oh my gosh, I don't know how to use this. This is just nasty. But do not worry, ladies and gentlemen, do not worry, because we're going to walk this through step by step. This first value in the lookup context says, what is the value that I'm looking up? So when my cursor is actually clicked in each box, I have a vertical bar that is also repeating. It's showing up. It's blinking. It's saying, hey, this is the value. The nice part about Excel is that it allows me to click in the data to actually type the value that I need here. So notice, I want to look up this value for student ID number 1. I want to look up this value. And when I do so, this value B2 populated. The reason, oops, sorry about that, one more time. So this value B2 populated, and notice when I did so, the value white shows up. The value white shows up because that's the value that's present in B2. And then that means I want to look up this value. Awesome, step 1. Step 2 is, what is a table array? And I know some people hear that word table array and they say, I don't know what a table array is. Remember, the word table array or array just means box of data. Box of data. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click in table array. And I'm going to start in my race field, left click and drag and create a box of data. I'm going to do it one more time. So I've highlighted the table array value here. I'm going to come into my data on J1, left click and drag, and you'll see that the green flashing lines are flowing around the data, the box, the array of data. And if you wanted to use this programmatically, it starts at the top left value, J1, and you give a colon and say that it goes down to K7, and that's how you write this using coding. So for any of you that are interested in coding in Excel, that's how you define this array, this box of data. You start at the value at the top left, and you go all the way down to the bottom right. And what I'm going to do here is that I'm going to hit a trick, and I'm going to hit the value F4. And when I did that, notice all these dollar signs populated. So I'm going to show you one more time. I'm going to come over here, start in J1, go all the way down to K7, and I'm going to hit F4. And F4 adds dollar signs, and all that means is lock the box. Don't let the box wander. Don't change the dimensions of the box. No matter what you do to the formula, it means lock. Or if you need to, put a dollar sign in front of every letter and every number. You could hand type them yourself. It makes no difference. Now this column index number, this says in your box of data, if I get a match, if white matches white, if black African American matches black African American, which column in your box do you want to produce? That's all it says. Which box do you want to produce? I want to produce the data in the second column. If this was a 3 box, if this was 3 columns of data, 4 columns, I could produce this data by calling this 3 or 4. I only have 2 columns, so I want to put a value of 2. And notice, look what happens here when I populate 2. I put 2. I then say, I want to produce the second column of data. And this last one gets a lot of people. I will tell you that Excel says, do you want to have an exact match, or do you want the match to match like 80%, 50%? So this confuses a lot of people. I tell people that I always want an exact match, so I type false. If you want an exact match, you type false. I have it here in this code here. And notice when I type false, I say, Excel, you have to have a perfect exact match. It can't be white underscore. It can't be white underscore 1. It's got to say white, white. It's got to be black, African American, black African American, black African American. It has to have the backslash. Everything has to be a perfect image for the match. And notice we put this formula in and it produces the outcome down here. It says, okay, for this column white, because we found white in this array, we're going to produce this non-minority field. And when I click OK, then this formula shows up here. It produced the formula for me. And I don't want to do that for every single value. That's going to take me too long. So notice when I come down here and I come to the bottom right corner of data, and I come to the bottom right corner of data, when I double click, see how my mouse changed? I go from the big fat plus sign to the little skinny one. Fat, skinny, fat, skinny. When I get skinny and I double click, this applies that same formula for every single cell. And it followed that path. It followed that path. If you want to see what it did, the nice thing about Excel is that Excel, if you hit F2 on the cell, will actually show you in colors what portion you actually did. So notice this one says it used this value to match in this box and produce this outcome. So we check these students that have acknowledged white ethnicity, white race, have a non-minority classification. This student in row ID 6 says that they are Black or African American, and that means that they qualify as minority. Awesome. So this is a powerful way to transform your data using a crosswalk or a VLOOKUP table. I'm going to make this nice. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to type minority classification, because I like to have headers on all my data. And I say, oh no, it didn't have that nice look. It's not consistent. I hope you all remember from last week, the paint function. I'm going to go ahead, highlight on B1, go up to my home, format painter. So I highlighted home, format painter. And now I'm going to click on C1 and it matched the same formatting that I used in B1. So that's something we went over last time. Hopefully we can see how useful that can be, especially if we don't know the formatting that was used for this header, but we like it. So let's say I look at this data and I say, oh my goodness, I can't say that other non-white are minority. They say or I'm saying unknown, it means minority. We can't do that. That's not really correct. And someone comes in and says, any student that identifies or did not identify their race, we don't want to count them as minority. We're just going to say that's unknown. And here's the nice part about using formulae. Notice when I come over here, notice my unknown. If I change this from minority and I call this unknown, look what happens. All of my values automatically changed and updated because the formula that you applied was consistent. So all of my unknowns that were here in my student population now transform the minority classification equally. And that is how powerful the VLOOKUP function is. It's fantastic. It saves many, many hours of work. I love it. And that's why I wanted to go over it today with you all. So the last part of this task, of this practice assignment, says, okay, let's produce a frequency chart. Produce a frequency chart of the minority classification student population. No problem. I love doing that. We went over this last time. The trick for us to be able to do this is to start over here in C1. We're going to control shift down. And notice when I control shift down, look at our favorite little box. This box that is so under-recognized can do so much for us. We love the little box down here at the bottom right. I'm going to left click on this little box. I find the chart button. I find the chart button. That was a tongue twister. And I'm just going to click over here on cluster, and I see, okay, I got my bar charts. I see that I got my count. I see my minority, my unknown. But I say, oh my goodness, I want to see the count. I don't want to have to transcend and see this could be 30, maybe 28, could be 27. The nice part about doing so, in your chart, all you do is come up here to the chart elements, and you say you want to add your data labels, and that will put our data labels down here. You can change this, and you can put them at different parts of your in your chart. You can take off the data table itself. There's a lot of things that you can do in this just to update your data. So I put my numbers here on top, and you can work through the chart as you so see fit. So in here now, I rapidly created a chart of my student population, identifying them as minority, non-minority, and unknown. Okay, so I have some questions coming in. Yes, can we formulate a percentage? I love doing percentages, but for this talk and the calculation of percentages are a little bit more strategic, because when we do percentage calculations, you can calculate percentages horizontally, you can calculate them vertically, or you can calculate them as a pane. So if we want to do percentages, I want to make sure to be cognizant of time, but we can do percentages at some later time together, or I can help you. It just depends on how you want to calculate the percentages, but excellent question. I see that we've had some new people pop in for attendance. If those that have popped in as a little bit of a housekeeping situation, if you can go ahead and type your name and your email into the chat, that would be fantastic. Okay, so again, that's a really nice way for us to analyze our VLOOKUP and race table. Now what we're going to do is that we're going to talk about our VLOOKUP and gradient table. And I love the VLOOKUP and gradient table because this allows me to visualize data quite rapidly. I've put all of the formulas in here as well, so that way you can see them. Here's what we're going to expect to produce. We got some colors, we got some max values, we got some matching. We're going to work through this one a little bit quicker, so that way we can get some practice and actually dive into our industry certs which is going to be coming up here. I love industry certifications. They're a big movement right now in the state of Florida. So we're going to work through some industry cert data as well. So looking at our VLOOKUP and gradient data, the first thing says, hey, use the formula in cell C2 to match the values in B2, the corresponding associated value in column M. Yikes, that's rough. What this says is that this says, hey, I got this value of the zip code. I'm sure we've all heard of zip codes. When our zip code in column B matches the zip code in column L, I want to produce this outcome. So this is an example of the VLOOKUP function. The VLOOKUP function can say, if I see a value here that matches here, produce this. Awesome. Let's do it together. I'm going to come over here. I want to put that value here in column C. I'm going to left click on this value, come up to my f of x function, and you should see your VLOOKUP there. If you don't, you just type it in, VLOOKUP, and you click go. Notice it populates. We're going to work through this one a little bit faster. The lookup value that we want to match is going to be this value here in B2. I'm going to click on it. And notice it produces that 15320102000. That's just a lot of numbers. My table array is just a fancy word for a box of data. I'm going to left click here, highlight in L1 and drag down. So I'm encapsulating my data. This is my crosswalk. I'm going to hit F4, and when I hit F4, that locked it in and added those dollar signs. This third row says, okay, what do you want to produce? What do you want to produce in your table? Do you want to produce your first column, your second column? If there was 3 columns, you can produce that. I'm going to put a 2 in because I want to produce the second column, so I'm going to type 2. And then lastly, my range lookup, always put false in here because I want a perfect exact match, and Excel just wants you to confirm that you want an exact match. And when I type in false, the entire formula comes up here. It's the same formula that's right here. It gives you the outcome for the cell right here. And now we have matched. We have said this value that exists here, we found it over here, and we produced this value here. When I go through, I don't want to retype this formula for every single cell. So I come over to the cell, and when I go down to the bottom right, notice my sign changes. Fat, skinny, fat, skinny, fat, skinny. I'm going to go back down, and when it's skinny, I'm going to double click, and this formula applies everywhere down here. And I even got some NAs, and this happened because at one time there was some data here, but I like to show people that because nothing broke, except for the fact that Excel couldn't find a match. And if Excel can't find a match, it produces this NA value. It says, I can't find a match. There's no blank here over here. So if I were to remove this, oops, not remove it there. If I were to remove this, you could just delete it. It won't impact your data at all. So now we've been able to crosswalk column B to column C. So I took the zip codes and I matched it to A, B, E, ESOL, and GED. Awesome. So now this says apply a red, white, green color gradient to the maximum score field to determine visually extreme outcomes. So what this means is that often in data, it's much easier to identify numbers when they are color coded, especially if you have a lot of them. And Excel will do that for you. So in column H through column I, we see that we got some lows of 0, some highs of 999, and then we have numbers in between. Excel will change the color gradient to easily identify them. I love doing this because people are very visual, especially in presentations. I'm going to come over here, highlight in H2. I'm left clicking in H2. I'm dragging down to my bottom. So I started here in H2. I drag down to my bottom. So I've identified my cells that I want Excel to compare for me. And now we're going to use conditional formatting. Conditional formatting says, apply some logic, Excel, apply some code such that you do some things to make my data more visual or to rapidly determine something. And I love conditional formatting. We often stay away from it because people just see conditional formatting the same phrase and we just get a little afraid, but it's really not that bad. Notice when I come down here to my color scales, this allows you to tell Excel, if you see extreme values and values in the middle, go ahead and add some color to them. So let's see what happens when I highlight, not click, I highlight here. So notice this is my green, yellow, red scale, where red identifies as the very low value, as a very low value. Green is a very high value. And the neat part about that is that we can invert that, we can flip that. And that's what happens when I shift over one. So when I shift over one, my maximum score changes color with my low score, and then all the gradients in between also change. So I always recommend that when you choose a gradient to analyze your data, to point out outliers to your team members or in a presentation, to be consistent with the gradients, because when you're consistent, then your people know how to train their eye for your data presentation or your data dive. So I always think that red is more alarming, green is better. So if you can make that relationship, that also helps as well. So for this scale, I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to choose the green, green, red, green, green. Oh, I actually say green, white, green, red, white, green color. So red, white, green. Which one is that one? Here we go. Red, white, green. So I'm going to pick this one because that's what it asked me to do. So now we want to apply some quick calculations. We want to say determine the max and min value of each of the minimum scores and maximum score value in column H and column I. So I don't want to look at this and say, oh, okay, I know what the max value is. Excel will do that for me. Again, if you don't want to do this and you just want to watch, I have the formulae for you right here. I have also posted the formulae directly in our solutions sheet. So here, this is the formulae that's used to give you this value of 547. So I'm going to come down here, and Excel is a fantastic way of doing this formula, but I'm going to show you a trick. If you come into the Excel cell itself and you type equals, equals is an indicator to Excel to start producing a formula. So I'm going to type equals max. Equals max is the formula that's used to tell Excel, I'm going to give you a list of numbers. You're going to tell me which one's the largest, which one's the maximum value. So I write equals max. I'm going to open a parenthesis. I'm going to open a parenthesis just like we see here. And I'm going to highlight my value starting here, going all the way down. I'll do that one more time. Equals max, open my parenthesis, equals max, open my parenthesis, and I'm going to left click at the top value and drag all the way down. And I can close my parentheses or hit enter. Enter, if you hit enter automatically, it closes the parentheses for you, as you so see here. Some people might get, depending on the Excel version you have, might say, hey, be careful, you need to add a closed parentheses. Do you want Excel to do that on your behalf? You just have to acknowledge them and say yes. So I also want to find a maximum score of my maximum score column. I don't have to rewrite that formula. All I have to do is come down here to this cell, highlight it, come down to the bottom right corner. Notice, look what happens. I go from the fat sign to the skinny sign, and I left click and drag it over. And when I do so, it applied that formula to this column. It applied the exact same formula. Oh, I didn't hit all the values here, so I got to do that. It applied the exact same formula to this column. So in this one, I'm going to change this because I didn't actually go, this was unintentional. I didn't go to the top. I only went to H6. So I'm just going to come over here and delete the 6 and add a 1, 2. I'm going to add a 2 because I want to start with my first number. So I went and I deleted the 6 and I added a 2. And that changes the formula to be used. So I still get the same 547, but I made the formula more accurate to reflect the entire column because I didn't click it the entire way. So notice here when I hit F2 on this cell, this one also copied to start at I6. I wanted to start at I2, so I'm going to change the 6 to a 2. And I got my min value. I'm sorry, I got my max value of my maximum scores. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen, you find an equally nice function called min, which can be used the exact same way. I'm going to type equals min. It even shows me what the function is here, just to give me an idea. I'm going to open my parentheses. It allows me to say, hey, what number do I start with? I'm going to start with this number up on top. Left click and drag all the way down. And I release. I hit enter, and it tells me the min value is a 0, and in fact, it is a 0. I don't want to have to write that formula again, so I'm just going to highlight the cell, come down to the corner, change my sign, as I see I did here, so I went from fat to skinny. I drag it over, and now that I found my maximum score, my minimum score of my maximum value, and that's going to be a 180. How awesome is that to be able to find max and mins, and then be able to determine the color scheme to help identify this population of seeing the visual data. So the last part about this exercise is that let's say a new zip code comes out. I'm sure we can all remember times that new zip codes have come out, and they're not short zip codes, they're long zip codes. And I asked to determine, are these the same? Is this the same zip code that's here? Is this the same zip code that's here? There's a way that Excel can do that. And I love that ability because often I need to determine, is this cell the same as this cell? And that's going to be the exact function. So I'm going to come over here into K2, and I want to determine, is B2 the same as J2? Or do these SIP numbers match? Let's check it out. I'm going to type equals. I'm going to type equals. And I'm going to write out EXACT. And the nice part here is that it actually gives you a small description. It says checks whether two strings are exactly the same. Whenever you hear the word string in Excel, it just means words. Words and letters is a string. If you hear numbers, numbers are numbers. And we're in an Excel, string is a form of text. So I'm going to write exact. I'm going to open my parentheses, and it says, provide me your first text. What's the first one you want to check? I want to check my text, even though it's in number format, in B2. And notice it populates here. It's the same one that's going to be down here. I put a comma because the form tells me to use a comma. It tells me to use this comma down here. And then I want to check it against J2. And when I hit enter, or I can close parentheses and hit enter, it's going to produce a true value if these two values match. I don't want to write that for every single value down here because I'd be writing a lot of values. I'd be writing a lot of formulae. So our trick is that we highlight this cell, come down here to the bottom right corner. Notice my plus sign changes, it changes sizes. I double click and look what happens. My false values show up like a beaming ray of light. And I see that I have two that do not have the same SIP values that are here. And I can see that this one is a 1020 and this one is 11200. And this one is here. This is a 1030 and this one is a 10300. So I did this on purpose. This is not actually true, but this is how you can easily match and determine whether data is the same between two different cells, which is something that may happen every so often. Okay, so hopefully we're feeling pretty good about this. I know I'm moving a little bit more quickly. I know, thank you so much for the powerful wow, I appreciate that. Could I get a thumbs up or a thumbs down? How are we feeling so far? Do we want to dive into some industry certifications data and do some analytics, knowing that we've used some? Okay, so I see Marcel is a little bit lost. Nakia, okay, a thumbs up. Thank you, Nakia. I understand that this is a little bit lost, but the nice thing is this is being recorded, and I'm also super friendly, so I do not mind helping people too. So I think it's important that we all work and always collaborate together. And I try to make myself super accessible. As I said, I don't get to teach as much as I used to. So when I get to do things like this and allow people to become action-oriented with the data that they use, then that means that we're all going to do better. Awesome. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Debbie. Thank you, Olivia. I appreciate that. And we're going to work on Antoinette. Thank you so much. We're going to work through the rest of this together to show you some quick analytics. I am running a little bit behind. Yeah, okay, no problem. Yeah, the recording will show up within 48 hours. And the nice part is if you're watching this, you can go back to the recording and watch what I typed, and you'll be able to do it as well. So, so that's the good part about this. So in here, we're going to do a couple different things. In here, I have a situation where my data was coded for a semester. But most people, they don't know what 221 means or some numerical value. They may know what the actual term is. So guess what? I got to use my VLOOKUP function again. I got to use my VLOOKUP function because every time I got a 221, I want to produce a spring 2021. Yes, Donna, the recording will be posted. Jocelyn, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Where will the recording be posted? If our team members from IPDAY could provide the link of where the recording will be posted, I appreciate that. So we will ask our team members to post that link, so it'll be available. So in here again, we're going to do a quick VLOOKUP function because we practiced that 3 times now. Everywhere I see the semester, I wanted to code the actual semester in a term that most people can be used. Thank you, team members. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a column. I want to insert a column between B and C. Very simple to do in Excel. I come over here to column C. I like to highlight because I'm a highlighter. I right-click on column C and I click on Insert. And notice that actually provides a space between B and D now, and it gives me this extra column. I want this to be my actual term. Voila. And now I'm going to use my VLOOKUP function because if this value matches any value here I want to produce this value. So I'm going to use my f of x function because we've written that a couple times. I come over here. Hopefully VLOOKUP shows up. If it doesn't, you can type it in, VLOOKUP, and hit go. And now I see it. Let's go ahead and use our assistant guide. Lookup value, I want you to look up this value here. My table array means give me the box of data. That's going to be this box here. Left click on the top, drag it down to the bottom. And notice it puts the formula in there for you. Remember, we hit that F4 to put those dollar signs in there to make sure that this table does not move. We don't want it to move. The column index says, okay, if we want to produce a value, what value in the column of your data do you want to produce? And I want to produce the value in column 2. So I'm going to type a 2 in here. And then lastly, always type false here because we don't want an inappropriate match. We want that match to be the same. So hopefully we've now done 3 examples of VLOOKUP and we can see how powerful this is. There's a new function coming out called XLOOKUP, which is really fun. So if that ever comes up later, we could do that as well. So now when I hit OK, oh no, look what happened. What happened here? It produced my formula. It didn't apply. And that, ladies and gentlemen, happens all the time in Excel if your Excel value is formatted as text. So the trick to make sure that you can actually apply this formula, change this text to general. And now, when I hit F2, it opens up the cell for me to type. And then I hit enter and actually produces the formula. So the key that happens is that sometimes your Excel, especially if it's produced from a data software or from an enterprise, they produce all values in text format because that way you don't have to worry about zeros being dropped off. So they'll give you these values in the form of text. You just have to change this to general. So I'm going to do it one more time. And the nice part here is that let's say you get confused with that, it's okay. What you can do is you can change the format to general at the very beginning, and then you can apply your function. So doing it one more time, click on my VLOOKUP. I want to look up this value. My table array is going to be this table array. Left click and drag. Always hit my F4 because I want to add my dollar signs. What column in my data array do I want to produce? I want to produce about column 2. And then range lookup, always type false because this just means that I want an exact match. And when I do so, it gives me the spring 2021. And since I changed that to general at the very beginning, I don't have to worry about reformatting the cell because formulae in Excel only work in this general, most of the times only work in this general format. They do not work if it's in the text format, which happens all the time. If maybe you're working with some enterprise or SQL programmers that pull data out of an enterprise solution system, they'll give it to you in Excel format. So now what I can do is that I can come down here, highlight, double click, and then this applies that same formula all the way down through. Oh my goodness, I wouldn't want to hand type this. Look how many data values I have. I have hundreds. If I want to go to the end, hit control, hold control, and hit down. And notice it brings me down to the very last value. I don't want to scroll. I could sprain a finger. So I can hit control and up, and it brings me to the top. I hit control, hold control, hit down, and it also brings me down. Awesome, awesome. So that is what these first couple dots are in one, was to insert a column between these 2 values and perform that VLOOKUP. Everywhere I see this number over here, I bring in this value. Fantastic opportunities. It's awesome. So now we get into some analytics. We got to start driving some analytics and some data. So here's a nice situation. I've produced the outcomes here for you. So if you did not get a chance to do that, but you still want to try the analytics, go ahead and use this tab that says Industry Search Solution. I'll add this fundable field here. This is a calculated field. We're running about 4 minutes behind. So if I don't get a chance to do it today, I promise I will remedy my situation at a later time and help you. The formula here is listed there. It just says if this value is a Y, if it's Perkins, put $1,000 here. So that's all this formula says. If you see a Y here, place $1,000. So for analytics, if you didn't get this here done, go ahead and use this sheet. Actually, I'll use this sheet for analytics as well. What we're going to do is we're going to produce this analytics, and we're going to do this pretty quickly because you're going to realize that these are fantastic tables that can be manipulated quite readily. They're going to become populated in separate sheets. So it's not going to look just like this. Each value is going to be put on a different sheet, but you'll see that as we get through. So again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm using the tab Industry Search Solutions, Industry Search SOL. Didn't realize SOL. Yeah, SOL. So we want to determine what certificates were earned most recently. So in this circumstance, this student earned this cert. This student earned this cert. This student earned this cert. And I want to determine the frequency of these certs. Let's go ahead and do it. The nice thing about 2 and 3 can be analyzed using the same table with a nice little heat map added to it. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to start here in G1. I'm going to start in G1, left click at the top. I'm going to hold Control, Shift, and then at the same time, all three hit the down key. Control, Shift, and down. So I hold Control, Shift, and down, and that highlights my entire column because I don't want to drag that entire thing down. That takes too long. And notice our little key, our little button that shows up that has limitless potential, especially if we're in a crunch, we had to come up with some good analytics about our data. When I hold this, it says, oh, okay, what do I got some formatting. I don't need to worry about formatting. I don't want to find duplicates. I need to know maybe some total. Okay, maybe, oh, look at these tables. I love pivot. I love pivot tables. Pivot tables are very powerful because it allows us to do some quick calculations so we can determine these outcomes. So I'm going to come down here to table, not worry about totals, not worry about spark lines. I'm going to hit my tables function. And notice if I highlight over these, it actually gives me some potential tables that it thinks that I may like. I love that. That's awesome. So let's say here I look at this and I say, I want to know how many certs my students earned, how many certs they earned of each type of cert. And I realize that Excel's pretty smart. It knows what we want. Many times it does, many times it doesn't. But if it doesn't, we can figure it out. And I'm going to left click here on this pivot table. And notice, ladies and gentlemen, it took my certs and it summed how many times that cert appeared in this column G. I love that. It's fantastic. Remember, it populated as a different tab. And let's explain what this means. My rows are my certs. My rows are my certifications. And the nice thing is it alphabetizes it for you. And then it says, what are the values? I want you to count my certifications. The nice thing here is that you can always change how this works. So if you have the value field, it could give you, if these were numbers, you could do a lot more with it. But because it's words, all you can do is count. This allows you to count. And again, we're very visual. Let's apply some color to this. Let's apply some color to identify max and mins. So I'm going to highlight, drag down, highlight, drag down, conditional formatting, color scale. I'm going to pick one because I want to be consistent. And I let it go and I realize that the 160 is the most, that one is the least, one is the least, one is the least. So I realized my NCSBN 001 was awarded 160 times. It was earned 160 times. And this comp combined with this NATH A003 were only earned once. We have some that were 3 and 4. But again, these visual colors allow us quick abilities to identify and see data. So it can drive stories when you're working with your colleagues or supervisors to help drive outcomes. So you can either target potential situations that are at risk or ones that are doing extremely well to see what's going on there to help elevate our programs entirely. The nice thing here is that working in our pivot table is just practice. You can come through. Let's say I left click on race and drag that to my columns. Look what happened. It disaggregated my data based off the race of my students. And it kept that number formatting. It kept that colorful number formatting. So I can see here that this 16 is a little bit darker, this 46 a little bit darker. So I can see that my African-American population has a high value of 46 that are earned in my NCSBN 001. A lot of story can be told here by disaggregating and using quick colors that allow us to focus in on data. And using these pivot tables is very powerful, especially when you're creating some PowerPoints or some PDFs and Word documents, because these are easily transferable from one to the next. We might want to go ahead and add a filter and say, I only want to look at solutions, at certificates that are Perkins funded. I don't want to look at ones that are Perkins funded. That's important ones for me. So when I click on Perkins, notice it shows all. I'm going to click on Y, and I click OK. And now it drives a different story. This is that same analytics, that same population that's applied. And here we realize that this is my Perkins funded population, which gives a very different story than my non-Perkins, fundable certs. So again, here with my non-Perkins, I see some different story. Again, it depends on what you're looking for in your data or what story you're trying to tell. You can pull the race out of your columns, just like that. You got to make the sounds. It makes it way more fun. Let's say you want to add gender. Throw gender into columns. So I can see here that I have 117 females that earned a non-Perkins funded certificate. I can add in all values again, and I can see that the distribution changes. Again, very analytic oriented, and this is a very powerful solution set. So we have about 9 minutes left, 8 minutes left. Let's go ahead. How are we feeling so far, at least on the analytics side? Have we liked the color conditioning? Have we liked the visual analytics, thoughts, ideas? I want to hit some more topics that everyone would love to see. Okay, I see a smiley face. Okay, good. So hopefully that's the color analytics combined with the ability to rapidly calculate using our pivot tables. Awesome. Thank you, Nakia, June. Anyone else like to see more about color, like to see more about pivot tables, anything about charts? Because you do have all of the solutions that are here. I provided them for you so you can see how to get them. Sometimes easier to work backwards. Okay, so let's go ahead and tackle some pivot tables. So I'm gonna tackle another pivot table option. So okay, yeah, Dennis, I like color analytics too. Color analytics are so powerful because it just draws you immediately to those extreme values. When you see those extreme values are indications usually of a great success or something that's considered at risk. And you don't have to drive through rows and rows of data. I like color as well. Agreed, Dennis. So let's say here that we want to rapidly determine how many, let's say that the key here in our last couple minutes is we determined in here that for every Perkins certificate, we get $1,000. I know that's not necessarily true, but I just said, let's assume that this is true. Let's say we want to determine how much money would be generated by semester based on fundable cert. Okay, no problem. We can do that real quick. All I do is come up here to columns to C, I highlight, and I'm going to drag over to my fundable. So I'm basically creating a highlighted row from C to I. And again, I'm working through industry search solution. I'm going to hit Control, Shift, and down all at the same time in that order. Control, Shift, and down. And it highlights everything between C and I. And notice our savior. I love the savior. I don't know why it's so small and hidden. This little savior pops up. But before I hit the savior, for those that didn't attend, I think probably the most positive feedback that I received from last week was this ideas key. I love the ideas key because the ideas key allows us to tell Excel to help us out. You know, Excel, can you provide us any analysis that will allow us to quickly determine our outcomes? And notice here that sometimes it can do that for you. So again, if you weren't able to see this last time, when you highlight the data, then you can actually tell Excel which fields are the most interest to me. And I can tell Excel that I really like fundable and I really like my actual term. So I'm going to show everyone what I did. It says which fields are most interested to me. I come up to my ideas. And it says, I really like my actual term, and I really like my fundable. And I click update, and notice it starts reanalyzing the data. And I say, oh, thank goodness, I have some donut charts. I got some bar charts. I'm in a last minute crunch. I only have a couple minutes left. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to insert this pivot chart here. And I realized that this is really nice because I feel pretty good about this. It went through and it found how many it counted the money, it counted my actual money. So in this circumstance, it's not perfect. It's not absolutely perfect in the way that the data was analyzed. So, but the nice thing is it allows us to rapidly change it. Notice fundable is where my money is actually provided. What it did in our suggestion, and notice it's called suggestion, it counted the actual term, but that has no relevance for us in this purpose. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to pull out my count of actual term. I'm going to drag my fundable into my values. This is where I can aggregate and sum data. And notice what it did is it summed the fundable amounts by semester. And that's exactly what we needed. So this is a very powerful opportunity for us to leverage to rapidly determine how much would have been awarded if every certificate was a value of $1,000. If I actually want to see these values, I come up to my plus sign, I add my data labels, and then the nice part about this is that you can actually tell it where it wants. You can tell my data labels to be. You can have more options. You can do some coloring. You can get in here and really make it pretty. But for all purposes right now, I'm just going to go ahead and say keep them out there, and I'm really happy with it there. You can put it inside. That doesn't show up as well. You can put it inside at the top. You can have these call outs. These call outs are nice because it actually comes through and focuses it specifically. So again, you can rapidly disaggregate and change the data values using these pivot charts that can help drive a story that maybe you did not see initially. Let's say, for example, just to get creative, I want to go ahead, I want to drag gender. I want to drag gender into my legend. So now by dragging gender, I can see that in here that my male female orientation is actually split, and look how quickly it colors it. I don't have to tell Excel to program and identify my x-axis and my y-axis. Using this pivot charts, you can actually drive and create these functions, these charts, such that you don't have to do the work. So here I can see that my my orange is my males, my blue is my females. This can be changed as well. Let's say that you didn't want it actually in my legend in my series, and I drag it down here. You can split it such that the fall disaggregates by male and female. You can invert the order and bring gender first and say all females by fall, spring, and summer, all males by fall, spring, and summer. You can change the data however you so see fit to help tell that story to your colleagues and your counterparts of what your programs are doing. So right now we are at 2:56. I know I have talked a lot. I hope you all have enjoyed this because I love empowering people and allowing people to help understand their stories that can be told in their data. Our IPDA team has prepared a survey that we're going to launch on this portfolio on the Zoom, and I will now turn this back over to Ms. June Rawl.
Wow, Mike, thank you so much. Unbelievable. Okay, you have a survey now that has appeared on your screen. If you would just take a few minutes, just 1 minute actually, to answer these 3 short questions, we really would appreciate to hear your feedback. While you do that, I want to remind you of next week's webinar, June 8th, Integrated Education and Braided Funding, a Practical Approach. So you won't want to miss that. Again, Mike, great feedback. Thank you so much for all your knowledge and expertise. We really appreciate it. And thank you all for all that you're doing too. We'll see you next week.